Hi, I'm Tammy. The purpose of the Tammy North Show is to give high achievers actionable content to propel themselves to senior leadership while living a balanced life. Women leading within corporations and government organizations who want to perform with authenticity at the senior executive level have found their community. Opportunities knocking, and I have one question. Is your resume or your portfolio up to date? We're living in some pretty crazy times, and you never know what's going to happen next. So let's think about some crazy good things that could happen. So go with me here. What if your phone rings right now and you answer it? Hello? Yes, this is her. And then you find out, due to unexpected circumstances, the position you've been dreaming of has just come open. You didn't expect this so soon. It's a little bit ahead of where you had it on your goal planner, but this is something you've been dreaming of. The voice on the other end says, hey, just shoot me a resume tonight and I'll make sure your name's in the mix. Whoa, wait a minute. Tonight? You want my resume tonight? Yikes. Yes. Sometimes life is exactly like this and you need to be ready. Think about it. If this happened to you, the odds are that you would give anything for just one more day to deep dive and to give your paper a good update. You're not even sure exactly where the most recent version of your resume is. Are you about to blow your big chance? No, that is not who you are. You've got this. The reason is that you are going to update this today. You're going to start working on it. Even if it takes you a few days, it's better to start today than to start the day the phone rings. We'll get it ready just in time when that big opportunity comes knocking. So first, I want you to find your most recent version of your resume. Good luck with that. But then, once you find it, remember where you have it, remember where you save it from now on, and I highly recommend you save it somewhere in a cloud drive like a Google Drive or a Dropbox or maybe your iCloud, somewhere that you can get to it all the time. And then this is really important. With the updates you're about to make, if you kind of have a position in mind that you're going for, then you need to tailor your resume for each position you apply for. So if you know the types of positions you're going to be looking for in the near future, then you can write it generally for that. But every time you send it to each individual job posting, or if you have ideas in mind and you're going to send it out to specific points of contact you have, understanding that they'll be hiring you for a program manager, for a senior executive position, for a readiness analyst. I don't know, there's all types of things you could be hired for. But depending on the exact role that you're going to be hired for, then you need to tailor the resume even further every single time you send it to every individual company or person. And if you're applying for a federal position, an United States government position, then those job postings are usually on USA Jobs. And within each job announcement, there'll be very specific words that are listed in the description of what this position is being hired for. It'll say, the applicant must have these qualifications, or it will say, or this experience. And it will also say, this position is responsible for these things. And there'll be a very specific list. And it's usually not too long, but it'll have plenty of words. And the main reason I say that is you need to go back if you're applying for one of those types of positions, and maybe even other online type of where you just found an online job posting of another kind and you're going to send your resume blindly into an automated system of some sort like that. The only way, if you don't have points of contact on the other end that are going to be looking for your resume, the only way your resume is going to pop for those positions is if the keywords from the job announcement are actually in the resume. So without lying, you have to be completely honest about the experience you do have. But if you do have experience that is listed in the announcement, then to the degree you're able, take the exact words from that announcement and craft it into your resume. And do it so that it's natural. Don't make it awkward. But you can work the words from the announcement into your resume, no problem. Especially if you really do have the experience. And then one other thing I want to say about experience, never lie on your resume for any reason about the experience you do or don't have. But one thing I do want to say is if there are 10 things listed in that announcement that you should have if you would like to apply to be considered, but you only have 9 of them or 8 of them, or you're missing a couple, see if there's another way that you can say, yes, I don't have this certification, but I have this number of years working in this field, which would be considered equivalent to this certification, let's say. Or you can say those kinds of things in your resume. And then also just because you don't have 2 out of 10 of the qualifications, if you really want this position, consider applying anyway. Because if you are actually the right person and it's worth it to the company or to the hiring manager to consider you based on your personality or other experience you have, give them the chance to say no. Don't automatically count yourself out. Because some positions, especially if you're going for a specific position, some positions only come open every so often. So if this is something you really care about and you can make a case in an interview of why you should be the person hired, then go ahead and apply. You never know how it'll turn out. And I think that often somebody would rather hire a slightly less experienced person who is innovative and energetic and has some big ideas about how they can make improvements over somebody with tons of experience who isn't actually going to execute, who has never actually accomplishes anything, or perhaps somebody who is very traditional. It would just all depend on how you're going to sell it. The traditional person with all the experience would sell their deep knowledge and the body of work that they've accomplished over their years, where a young person who is maybe doesn't have all of the experience, maybe they were on some innovation team, maybe they went to Harvard. I mean, there could be things that you would have as a younger person with less experience that you could sell. And it's just two different techniques depending on which one of those people you are. If you really care about a position and really think you want it, then go ahead and apply. Then be prepared to make your case in the interview. Okay, one thing is you need to place your value proposition right at the top. What value do you bring to this position? Introduce yourself as an executive level person who's ready to step into this role today. And yes, you can be a 30-year-old person who's ready to be an executive. It's all in how you sell yourself and how you carry yourself. Why should somebody consider putting you in that position? And trust me, I've seen some very young people end up in these types of roles. So it's completely possible. But you need to be playing a bigger game. You need to be forward leaning. You need to be thinking strategically, and you need to be prepared to sell yourself in that way in the interview. So you want to be separated from the pack as a leader. A leader is somebody who's capable of building and inspiring teams to move toward a vision. You need to quantify and qualify this type of experience in your resume. So have you led teams? Have you been responsible for seeing a vision and then actually leading a team to create that vision to make it real? How many people have you led? In what ways did those teams succeed? You make sure that in your resume, you're able to completely identify the times that you had those experiences, but then don't just say you led the team. I led a team of 100 people, but what did that team do? During the period of time you were the lead of that team, what did they actually accomplish? If you're applying for positions outside of the government, in the commercial sector or for defense contractors, etc., then you need to make sure your resume is no more than 2 pages. Basically, the resume is just to get you in the door. So you should be able to make it interesting enough in 2 pages. The whole point of that resume is for them to go, okay, this person's interesting. I'd like to talk to them. So it needs to be succinct and it needs to pack a punch. And I'm telling you, it's all about the results. What have you actually done? What have you actually created? What have you actually executed? If you're applying for a government position, it can be longer than that, but it still doesn't need to be probably longer than 4 pages. Government resumes and USA jobs will allow for more information. On some of those panels, I have seen very long resumes where they end up being, 10 pages or something, but it's fine if that's what happens, because some people use the USA jobs resume builder, which is fine, but it doesn't have to be that long. It's kind of about the work you want to put into it. I'd be happy to talk to any of you about that if you're interested in that topic. And of course, 2 pages, plus you can have an additional cover page if you think it's appropriate. And the cover page is one great way for you to specifically sell yourself for this exact position. And every single cover page should definitely be tailored to each individual person you're sending the resume to. So if you are applying for a government position, you can just tailor it to the position. And if you are applying for a civilian or a commercial sector job of some type, and you have a point of contact you are sending it directly to, then you can address the cover page directly to that person. So one of the things as you're updating your resume is you should review it for the visual organization of the resume. You can look at the way it looks, is it visually appealing? Is there a little bit of space so that it's not too hard to read? Even though you only have 2 pages, it might be tempting to just completely fill it up with words, but then it's going to be very hard to read. So you got to think about this. You're the hiring manager, or you're the person who's going to decide who they're going to interview, and you're reading resumes, and you have 25, 50, I don't know, it's, a stack of resumes, and maybe you don't know any of them. If you know some of them, those might pop out at you naturally, but if you don't know the people at all, you have the stack of 50 resumes, when you are looking through it, what is going to catch your eye? Some of them are just going to be horrendous to read. There are going to be some people who just send the exact same resume over and over and over to every job they apply for, and they put basically no thought into it, and it's just packed with words and seeming to be run-on sentences, and you can't even process it. Your eye doesn't even know how to follow it. So don't be that person. Make sure you review it for the way it looks on the paper. How does your eye flow in a nice manner? Can your eyes process the lines? Is there space to add a little bit of pause for reading, etc.? Maybe you have a little unique call out box for some of your strengths and attributes. How it doesn't really matter, but as long as it looks professional. Don't do anything too trendy or crazy, but there's a lot of really great examples online, and just as long as it's clean and professional, it's going to be great. There's definitely some elegant ways to highlight certain information, such as your value proposition, but just make sure that it's organized so that the most important details about you catch their eye. And definitely put your most recent work experience toward the top. And as we're discussing, definitely quantify your experience, the size of the budget managed, the number of people you led, but then craft it to highlight the effort properly. Maybe you only led 3 people, but your small team had a really giant impact. Authentically let the value come through, and definitely ensure that your statements are results oriented. You did X. This resulted in a savings of X. Make your impact clear. You're a person who can make big things happen. My team of 50 people did X. We delivered this project ahead of schedule and under budget. If you took over a project from somebody and you were able to save it, it was a failing project, but you were able to turn it around, then highlight that. If you were able to improve processes, save money, save schedule, any of those kind of things, people are going to love that. So really highlight those kind of things. If you were able to do something very innovative or change a culture, or if you were able to do some sort of corporate merger or some big strategic event that actually had a wide ranging impact, even better, especially if you're going for a very senior position, then the more strategic accomplishments you have, the better that's going to be for you. And as a general rule, don't go back more than 15 years max, but you can put any older certifications or education down in the back of the resume if they're still applicable. And you don't have to put dates. Like if you did your master's degree 15 years ago, just say you did your master's degree, and all of your education goes down at the end of your resume. They'll look at that if they really care. But a lot of times the main thing they're going to care about is all of your experience. Okay, so that's your resume. And if you want to, a lot of times these days, resumes are submitted electronically, and there's online ways that you have to upload them and all kinds of things. So I always put my resume into a PDF before I do that. That way nobody can change it. That way it's, it's frozen the way it is. If you are going to print it out, then definitely don't use the cheesiest paper you can find, but you can just at least use good paper. But you can go to Office Depot or probably most stores that have printer paper of any kind. Definitely Amazon could probably bring you some tomorrow. But one thing you could do is get resume quality paper, like some really good stock, maybe slightly off-white, really nice paper, if you're going to be physically handing it to somebody. So those are my tips about the resume. And I'm always happy to talk to you about your resumes. If you want to go on my website, if you go on my website, there's some ways that you can work with me there. And one of the great uses of one single session would be to go over your resume and to get some tips and tricks on that. So let's say you found the perfect position and now they're very interested in you, and they called you. They got your resume. They're like, wow, this person's very interesting. And they said, we really like to see your body of work. Do you have a portfolio? Oh goodness. What? A portfolio? I need to submit a portfolio? Okay. Again, you got this. So of course, if you have to provide a portfolio, again, much like your resume, it's going to be a lot easier if you do the work way ahead of time. That way, when this perfect for you opportunity comes, all you have to do is tailor it for that position and you're going to feel like you have it all together when you say, no problem, I have it right here. So what kind of positions require a portfolio? I mean, here's some I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm missing some, but some might be a software programmer, application developers, musicians, photographers, authors, copywriters, painters, artists, home designers, architects, remodeling contractors, personal stylists. You get the idea. There's countless jobs where even if it weren't required, that a portfolio might come in handy. So I want you to remember one important thing. Your portfolio is yours. If you want to stand out in a noisy world, you're going to have to find your own voice and your own style. You don't want to blend into the crowd. So what this means for you is that you should never directly copy somebody else's product. If you see somebody else's portfolio online, then you might get an idea from that, but never directly copy it. In a portfolio work, you are clearly showcasing your own efforts. But even the way you organize them, the photos you choose, kind of the way you capture the photos, maybe the angle from which you capture them, the format, any words you put in there, that all should be true to you. And that's all going to be a reflection of you. So just keep that in mind. It's sort of a creative effort. So when you are preparing a portfolio, if you've never done one before, first thing is to brainstorm a list of all the potential projects that you might want to highlight. This is kind of fun. So just think back on all the projects that you've worked on. Think of anything that relates to the desired career that you want. If you're a project manager or a program manager, you could highlight programs or projects that you have successfully led and some of the highlights of those that you would like to show. If you have some pieces of evidence of some type, anything, budgets, schedules, pictures of the systems that you've delivered, I don't know, some things like that. If you have something that you're able to share, it would be legally allowed for you to share it. And you have those kind of examples, yes, even if you're a project manager, you could probably make a portfolio. Maybe you have art that's displayed in various locations. Maybe you are a website developer and you've developed websites or iPhone applications. If you're a remodeler, maybe you flipped a house or multiple houses. Maybe you restored old cars. If you're an architect or a stylist or a photographer, you probably definitely have pieces of work that you would love to show. If you develop products to help teachers or other professionals, you can create a resource to highlight your special gifts to the world in that way. But just for this step, just consider all the ways that you've already given so much to the world, big and small, and just write them down. You're just kind of capturing ideas of things that you've done that are special that you may want to include in the portfolio. You can worry about how you're going to include it later, but just think of some things that you've done that you would really love to show somebody. Okay, so now step 2 of creating your portfolio is to choose a method for presentation. So if you're an artist or you have projects that are best represented visually, you may want to create a hard copy portfolio or a professionally bound book. And this is pretty easy to do. I know that there's numerous online ways. If you submit, here's my photos, that you can have books created for you just from your photos alone. So this would be a pretty easy thing to do, but you just have to collect the photos and then have it and then actually submit it. And this is the kind of thing you probably can't do in one day. So this is why we're talking about this, because the sooner you do it and the sooner you gather all of this work, the more professional you're going to seem, a month from now when you just take out this book and are like, well, here's my body of work. These days, people also choose online portfolios where you can just share a link upon request. So if somebody says, do you have a portfolio? Yes, I do. I'll just shoot you over the link right now. And you can just send them a professional email. The link's included. And a person could just go follow the link and dig around and just check out your work that way. That could happen for any of the visual representations we already discussed for artists, stylists, general contractors, etc. Any of these kind of things. But also software programmers and data scientists or people like that may want to use repositories such as GitHub, which highlight applications or data models that you've developed or contributed to. Those are just some examples. From my understanding, I do work around the technical field and I'm heavily involved in the technical fields, but I am not actually a software programmer. I have taken a bunch of data science classes in the past, including putting some of my stuff on GitHub. So, but from my understanding, that GitHub, if you're a software programmer, that GitHub is essentially like your resume in many cases, that it could be used that way. If somebody says, hey, just send me the link to your GitHub, then people may not even have to submit a resume in that regard, depending on the work that they've done. So it's kind of interesting. The method you choose to capture and display your work is going to completely depend on who you plan to share it with and the type of work that you wish to highlight. Will you create a website to showcase your work or a physical product? If it is physical, will you make a professional binder or a hardbound book? Just decide what makes the most sense for you. This is all going to depend on the amount of customization you want to do to your portfolio based on who you want to share it with. It's also going to depend on exactly the image you're trying to project by creating your portfolio. And this is something only you can answer for yourself. So if you have a vision of having a very professional leather-bound portfolio that you can go lay on a table somewhere, I don't think that's happening very often in coronavirus time. So in those cases, the online version might be ideal. But you can see how this could change over time, and it could change based on your industry, and it can change based on your own specific experiences. So all of these possibilities are good. You just need to find the one that fits your own personal vision of the project. So step 3 is to collect examples of the projects you have created. This could be photos of your work, descriptions of a project, excerpts of writing, newspaper or magazine articles about the work you've done, published works such as books or articles that you've written. You know what you do, so just find creative ways to showcase your own brilliance. Okay, step 4 of creating your own portfolio is to make it personal. Ensure that you are present in your own portfolio. You can and should include photos of you actually doing your craft. So if you're a painter, you flip houses or whatever, have pictures of you actually doing the work. If you're a podcaster, have a picture of you recording a podcast with your microphone. When you do this, this is a touch that will make it so strongly your own that nobody else could ever claim it was them. So this is kind of like a signature. Having your picture throughout the portfolio makes it uniquely yours. It will make it easier for people to understand who you are, and it will help them to connect with you, especially if it's online and during a time like coronavirus where people don't have the opportunity to meet you in person as often. It may be very helpful for them to see pictures of you and for them to understand, oh, okay, I really like this person. And again, it's not required. So if you feel for some reason that's a bad idea for you, you do what makes you comfortable, but it should bring that human connection in most cases. Depending on your focus and what kind of job you are getting, creating some of these pictures might even be something you can do while you're teleworking right now during coronavirus time. Just have your partner or some of your older kids stage some candid photos of you doing your work. If you're a photographer, have them get photos of you taking photos. Are you a home organizer? Then get photos of you taking a client through part of the process. Have fun with it. Depending on your resources and your level of production, you can even get a professional photographer. And one thing you might consider to save cost is to get a budding professional photographer, somebody who's just starting out in their first few months of being a professional photographer. Maybe you can trade services with them in some ways, or maybe they'll just offer you a slightly lower cost, but still, since you're just trying to get some candid photos, it might be perfect. Just something to think about. Okay, for the 5th step of creating your portfolio, have you received any awards or media attention or other accolades? Start to gather all of the special recognition in one place. You might have an I love me wall where you display these kinds of things. And if this is you, then take the time to make excellent copies or photos of all of these items in a format that you can share if you haven't already. For the 6th step, you should include letters of recommendation. If you have letters of recommendation, then gather them, get them all together and add them to your portfolio. If you don't have any, then this is a good time to reach out to some of your mentors and connections and ask them. In a different podcast in the future, we'll cover how to get good letters of recommendation. I think that's probably a skill that probably people don't spend enough time considering. When you need a letter of recommendation, it would be ideal to understand how to do that. Some other things you can include is your degree certificates, proof of any certifications or licenses that you have, other qualifications. So the further you get in life, the more of these you're going to have. So just take the time to find the proof, gather the copies, and properly organize them and store them and then decide which ones of them matter and which ones you'd like to include in this portfolio, if any of them. All of the activities of creating a really good, robust portfolio you can probably do mostly from home, and every one of these steps could take a lot of time, depending on how organized you already are and how far along in this process you are. The thing is, if you should need a portfolio and you don't have one, you could miss out on that killer opportunity. So today, at least do steps 1 and 2, which is think of all the potential things that you would love to put in a portfolio, and then think about the method by which you would want to present them. Those 2 things, just think about those. And then over a period of time, maybe this would be something a really great goal to set for 2021 would be to create a portfolio by March. And then maybe between January and February, you spend the time creating, copying, figuring out what you're going to do. If you're going to make a hardbound version, if you're going to just have a portfolio like a leather bound version that you can adjust yourself, or if you're going to do something online. So whatever you're thinking, just kind of get that in your head and then break out tasks to complete it by a certain point in time. earlier in the year coming up. This can actually be a pretty fun project. So even if you never plan to show your portfolio to anyone, it still wouldn't hurt to make a very simple one, maybe like a binder or something with document protectors in it, and just kind of put things in there that you want to keep special for yourself. Because what this could do for you is on the days where you're thinking to yourself, I haven't done anything in my life. Because everybody has those days where you start to even wonder what you've done. And if you have been working for 20 or 30 years, you have done some things, but some days you feel like you just get kind of down in the doldrums, like you haven't done anything at all. And one thing you can do is go flip through that and it'll remind you, oh, I did that. That was pretty cool. I remember when I worked with that team. I remember when we really made this big difference in the world over here. You can start to think, it'll just kind of refresh your memory of the accomplishments you've had, and it might make you feel better when you need it most. And you can also use such a binder if you keep at least the highlights of your career in some type of a binder like that. You can use it to refresh your memory, prior to a job interview, or if somebody says, have you ever done anything like, and they have some topic and you're like, oh yeah, I think I did like 10 years ago. Then you could kind of go back there and refresh your memory on exactly the details of what that was. But, if you don't need one, you don't need one. But I think it's probably a good idea to at least have a very simple one just in case. Someday your grandkids could even use it a long time from now to go, who was my grandma? Who was she? Or who was my great grandma? And somebody will find that book, wherever it is. People flip through it and go, she was in the Navy? Something like that. It's going to be interesting to somebody. But most of all, it just keeps your career-related information organized and at your fingertips for any reason that might come up. I talk about executive presence a lot on this podcast and on my blog, but a person with executive presence will be ready when that amazing opportunity comes knocking. And what does executive presence really mean? Executive presence doesn't mean literally that you want to be an executive. Maybe it does. That's each individual person. But what executive presence really means is that other people in the organization look at you and see you as a leader. They believe that you are capable of doing big things. They believe that you are thinking strategically and that they're able to trust you with really big jobs. And if you choose, then yes, it also does mean that you have executive potential and could rise to the top of an organization if that's what you want. And people want different things, and not everybody wants to do that. But you should still worry about your executive presence just for the point that it means that you're a great leader and that you have the ability to do really big things. So when you arrive at an interview, even if it's an interview on Zoom, and you have a neat professional appearance, you're the picture of poise, people will take note. When they ask you for examples of your work and you open up your book to the exact page to highlight the perfect example, you will come across as organized, methodical, and prepared. These moments are always impressive. And the best way to curate these moments is to have the work done ahead of time, so that even if you have to tweak or tailor your resume or your portfolio, it'll be pretty easy and low stress, and you'll be able to take care of it in no time, and you'll be ready when opportunity comes knocking. You can connect with us on Facebook at Genuine Driven Women, or to learn more about what we offer, check out genuinedrivenwomen.com.